and say, okay, welcome everyone to our Management 3.0 October seminar. We do these seminars monthly with thought leaders, industry experts, people who we just find interesting. And the idea is to get like-minded people together in our community, share ideas and ask questions. And so David is, he's been on our podcast. He's part of our community. He's super inspiring. And he's talking about leadership agility for modern organizations. Leadership with Imperfect Feet. So David, I'm going to let you take it away from here, and go for it.
No worries. I got asked to be a part of this, and it helps me really share either my good or bad experiences of what I've learned. And really, I don't like to call it just agile anymore. It's more, how do we lead a modern organizations where we're moving from where we're trying to execute what we think we know to really building a culture that can support a continuous learning organization. So a lot of times I really try to work with groups and organizations to really question whether how well they know it and get people feel comfortable with the idea of we can't think of a business case of everything we need to know and predict the future, but we can develop a capability that can rapidly learn their customers and the organization as we proceed through. I'm just kind of curious, does anyone else in the call feel that way, where you're kind of shifting from where you would make all the plans once a year to now you're really moving in a more iterative fashion where you're really not trying to build the quickest, rather you're trying to build the quickest. So I'm just kind of curious of other people's thoughts on the call.
Before you say anything, does anyone know how to turn off that beeping sound anytime someone joins? I've never heard that before. Does anyone know how to turn that off? Or is it impossible? Okay. Anyways, if you figure it out, let me know. Sorry. Continue. Yeah, anyone have answered to David's question?
Okay. I would agree with David completely.
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
No, I apologize. I would agree completely that the shift is now towards agility of managing everything that we're doing and not just delivering software as fast as possible. It's how do we adapt to the changes which are happening constantly?
That's a good question. That's a good point. The world is changing rapidly, and we just got to be able to learn enough. And even using words like hypothesis or bet or guess almost seems like foul words in legacy organizations. Do you feel the same way, Sean?
I feel like that the words are still part of the vernacular that we all use, so it's not uncommon to hear. I think people take it at face value sometimes, and otherwise they'll extrapolate and make it more than it really is to say hypothesis when what they mean is idea. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I'm just kind of curious, we have a bunch of other people who joined the call. What are some of your things you're seeing in your workplace today? You don't have to mention where you're working if you don't want. Okay, and what I like if we can start building a culture of pretending we don't know everything at the time. Oh, sorry, Maria, did you want to say something? No? I think once we build a nomenclature where we can really kind of admit we don't know always what we're truly building, but we're interested enough to learn and discover from the customer that we should really redirect that empathy to our employees that allow them to be wrong and allow them to really discover things and create that safety to get that happen. Because too many times I think the organization goes with fallacy that they know everything they want to build and do, and the world isn't going to change. And then we also put that on our employees that they can't be wrong, they can't make mistakes, and they don't have the ability to grow. And I think if we want to create a growth organization, we need to create that space where people can invest into discovery, and we built that into the project time of how can we quickly learn and iterate. So that way we don't have to we have to be precise, but we can build a capability that we can quickly learn. Does anybody else have anything to add? You don't want to just hear me talk the whole hour, I don't think, but if you want, I can keep going.
Just keep going, David, and then if people want to jump in, then people will jump in.
Yeah, please feel free to jump in, then I can learn as well. But I think we need to we say fail fast and fail often, and that's a real convenient thing to say, but failure's got to be affordable. And what I mean about failure's got to be affordable, this is where some kind of rapid, exponential, small little bets, we got to go from doing year-long projects to doing a week or 2 weeks of continuous delivery, where if we're wrong, failure can be affordable. And then failure is actually the investment we're putting into learning. And to do this, I think we need to incentivize leaders to see what their organization has learned over a year. Was someone trying to say something there? So I think if we start building incentives and leaders to really measure them on growth, it allows it to cascade down, and really we can start building in employees what they can learn and what they can use to grow and measure them on that. And not only just all mistakes and all learning, there needs to be outcomes that we're really generating value, whether it's new customer intake, whether it's more use, whether it's bigger revenue. And I don't like to use revenue as an only target, because I think you can achieve a revenue target at the expense of sustaining growth. How are you currently being measured in your organizations today?
From my perspective, it's still a lot being measured around revenue delivery and over actual tacit value. It's how much are we bringing in, how much is we spending to bring that in, so on and so forth. The traditional measures, really.
Yeah, and if we focus on revenue, and I learned this really early in my product management career, my product was selling like crazy. So I thought, wow, life is going great. And one of the UX people on my team said, do you want to kind of come with me and as we do these user visits and stuff? And I'm like, sure. I love to hear how much they love my product. And it was a little bit of painful task to hear them say how much they hated using my product, but their company purchased it and they were slaves to the product. And hearing this critical feedback was so great because it allowed me to redo the roadmap and really put the UX, the user experience and the easier way to use my product ahead to build in. If I was just fixing on the revenue number, I wouldn't have known how to pivot and make arrangements. Because the truth is, hearing how bad they disliked it amongst that tour and a number of customers allowed me to get ahead to make it more usable. So that way, as other competitors hit the market, I was really kind of minimizing the pain they were suffering from that lack of user experience. And like Sean said, if we just focused on revenue, I don't think you said that. I think you imply you're just looking at revenue and cost today. But that only gives you one point of the story.
Correct. Yeah. And it's often the wrong place to look to see if you want to be able to grow for the future. You have to be able to have that feedback loop with customers as well as internally to make sure that you're going in a place that can grow you to hopefully grow your revenue, obviously, but to also grow the product vision, to grow what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, I like to say revenue is a byproduct of a great user experience and a great customer movement. Because then you got to do the pricing game. Is my price too high, price too low, to figure things out? But if you're not in front of the customers regularly, and I want to take one step closer, not just the customers, but the users that use your product. We live in a world now, I think, where we're the most fickle customers we've ever been on any time of the earth. And I'm as guilty as anybody, right? I'll download an app today on my phone and change it tomorrow and quickly change things because not because I'm a bad person and I'm fickle, which maybe I am, but then I could also really be able to really keep pace with that change. Nicole, did you have anything you wanted to say? Okay. But so I truly believe in order to keep pace to our ever-changing customer, we need to really be able to see what's happening in the world of technology and user behavior and figure out how to either improve the customer's lives, solve a pain they're having, or try to figure out a problem that people would be investing in having your product to solve. Which really creates an organization that you need to support that. Leaders that are willing to really let product people go in discovery mode and learning mode. Ahmed, did you want to say something? I apologize. I see people's names come on the screen. I don't know if that's, hey, I have something I want to inject or say or challenge or question. I'm really hoping we can make this as collaborative and interactive as possible. Okay. The puppies seem to have something to say. So can you share with me an experience where you just felt that you couldn't be wrong, that you couldn't grow, that failure meant absolute catastrophe? Anybody? Okay, well, I know I've been in that situation many times when you're feeling the pressure of we got to meet this date, we got to meet this outcome, we have to, do a lot of things. And what I did to help control that anxiety was I would start making a decision journal and a mistake journal, and I would do it religiously over time every week to reflect on previous decisions or previous assumptions where I thought failure was critical. Because I think sometimes the culture doesn't provide an opportunity for learning, but then sometimes we don't feel we can take that opportunity to learn. So I think a good exercise is for us as individuals to really validate and measure ourselves whether our assumptions of that impact of being wrong is true. Because I think sometimes it's not on the leader to create an environment, but for us to be able to question and see and probe whether that environment exists. because I think too often, especially when you're changing cultures or organizations are changing more rapidly, we bring the last philosophy of what was going on into the new change. So then the change doesn't truly land or have an effect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I know I would always assume, because when you come to a new company, sometimes people will go, oh, that will never happen here. That will never be accepted. And then when you're new, you're braver, right? Because you're coming in with no baggage of associated wins or losses they know. So I think as we get into an organization longer, we have to remember of what would it be like to be a new person and challenge that status quo. Because when leaders come in, when I come in, at least anyways, I get told of how things have been and how it will never change. Which when you're coming in as a change leader, is stuff you don't want to hear too often. So you really got to kind of get an understanding of why that belief is true and show and make it very visible when you can challenge those assumptions and disprove them. Because that really helps get the resistors become more champions. Is there any questions anybody has on the panel? Because it's weird when you keep talking and you're going through your normal things, but I want to make sure this isn't just my time or your time, it's all of our time. So if you want to give my perspective on things or a burning question, I would love the ability to answer it or try to answer it or say I don't know.
Well, David, some people wrote in questions actually before coming, so I have some that I'll look at, and they're less questions and more just topics. Here's one from Miko asking, can you give concrete examples on how agility expresses itself in leadership behavior?
Concrete examples you can see if leaders are truly being agile, they're actually killing projects or killing initiatives. I find if they're starting to understand agility and being able to get things to market quickly, they can let go of their ego and quickly start canceling initiatives, even if it was their pet projects, to really be able to pivot to what they've learned. So you're not building a pet project, you're building from what the market's telling you. And if the leader starts explaining and being humble, what keeps them up at night? When they start allowing themselves to be vulnerable and going, wow, I'm scared if we don't make this deliverable, my job's on the line. I think when they start killing projects, show vulnerability, and when they start sharing their mistakes, because they love saying that fail fast and fail often. They don't always like that idea of sharing their mistakes. So I think when they get to share their mistakes, when they get to be vulnerable, what concerns them, and when they're able to react on data that they're getting and be able to kill projects. Because in a lot of large organizations, you're only incentivized on delivery. And so people don't feel comfortable stopping projects. So those are the three things I usually look for, whether leadership is starting to embrace agility.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Anyone else have questions right now?
What are some of the best ways to engage leadership beyond just choosing to adopt Agile because it is the thing or because they've seen all the burn down charts and the measures and they like the idea that they have measurable different metrics outside of just cost and revenue because they want that? How to engage them to choose to take things up like Management 3.0, to take on agile thinking instead of just traditional thinking with a new veneer?
It's more what I like to do, and the thing is you don't always get a chance to get in front of the leaders. So that's why I try to blog and stuff and put it on internal social media sites so they begin to read it. Recently, I bumped into a leader that I've never met before in my organization. And he's like, "Hey, you're Dave Dame, you're the anti bureaucracy guy." And I'm like, "Uh huh." I was kind of worried, like, did I offend you? Did I do that? So you got to try to get a way of getting where they're reading and communicate with them. But you really got to try to build that relationship to show them uh, how their traditional thinking kind of restricts agility. And what I mean by specifically, when they're trying to set out yearly plans, the truth is, and if you can get them in the right state and where there's no one around and say, "Are you 100% sure that this plan is going to go like you wish?" Instead of trying to plan it out as we're only gonna say it's successful if we launch it on a date. What if we do smaller sub launches? What if we start doing pilot projects and really trying to get them to reduce the risk of their decision being wrong? Or alternatively, you show them the value of what they learn by getting a small customer group. I find just getting the leaders in front of the customers and co-creating things really helps them understand where things like Management 3.0 will work. And a lot of things I like to use is, and I've been using this a lot recently, is delegation poker, right? About pushing decision making down, because what I've learned is the biggest impact to agility that leaders are creating obstacles for is the time waiting for a decision. And I think these are all invisible tasks, or invisible taxes that go on being not showing any value. So what I try to do is if I go to you for a decision, Sean, I start measuring the clock. And then if it's a day or a week, let's say it's a week or a sprint length, I'll say that cost of waiting for your decision costed the organization 30 grand. Even if we were wrong, would this been a $30,000 mistake? Because you almost have to quantify the lack of empowering decision making underneath. You need to quantify what that cost is and impacting the organization. And I think we got to start quantifying these invisible taxes that the organizations are paying to get them to use some Management 3.0 practices, like pushing decision making down by trying to expedite what are the true costs of not fixing things. And I think once you well in large organizations is a dollar value, because cost is king, and PowerPoints. If you can communicate in those two languages, you can really help start to see it in some of the other Management 3.0 practices as well.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Is there any other questions from the group here? We have, oh, I see something. I'm gonna try to read it. I got new glasses, so be patient with me. I work with a leadership team within the financial services industry that misunderstood Agile, where their idea of it is reactive planning, no long-term vision, and that Agile is about efficiency. So to overload the teams with multiple initiatives on the go, since Agile allows us to pivot and multitask. This is a result of metrics that emphasize on delivery rather than business value metrics and technical quality metrics. As a result of an Agile coach who incorrectly advocated that in Agile, there is no long-term planning. Lastly, the leadership team is very resistant to culture. How do you even begin? Wow, that's the starting point of every big change initiative. So the fallacy is that there is no long-term planning. I think there's long-term vision setting and goals, but what they don't realize is agile, you continuously plan. So you don't just do a one long-term planning phase or cycle that you're continuously planning. But I think you need to set the vision, right? I think setting a vision of 3 to 5 years and continually replanning as you learn more is good. But yeah, I see a lot of organizations see agile as strictly a project management delivery process. What you need to really do to begin is to show when you release it at the end of the year or a year and a half, do we even have a means of measuring whether people are using that product and feature, and how is that turning into acquisition of new customers or long-term using? So the first step is really getting data analytics to be a first class citizen of measuring outcomes versus output. Because too often the IT team was only measured on output. So even in a financial industry thing, as long as I can get this solution out and I did it on your requirements, whether it's success or failure, you can't hold us as a development team accountable. What I found is getting outcome metrics really helped align the development teams with more constructive actions and feedbacks. So change what you're measuring. Efficiency, I'm a firm believer that efficiency is going to be an outdated metric because we're going to need to continuously change. It's better that you can rapidly learn and change and find a way to measure that, the time to pivot, the time to learn, instead of the time for efficiency. Because today's best practice is tomorrow's status quo. So find new ways to measure and quantify learning, find new ways to measure customer centric, and try to get the development teams or the projects to work more closely with the business and customers to get a shared understanding. What I try to do is choose a small project that they need to get out, they're under the gun, and they haven't had time to do the planning, to get them engaged in it, to show how you're refactoring and replanning. Because I found in some cases, either leadership will have an empathy of what product and development teams go through, or they really enjoy it and they want to be a part of it going forward. And they think, to answer the last part of your question, they seem to be resistant to culture. They think agile is usually a thing that the delivery teams do, but I try to show them that if they don't change the way they do control functions, especially in financial service organizations, if we don't find a way to change how we do regulatory compliance and audit, to really expedite and speed up everything, how to account for what that cost is to the end delivery. If we don't start measuring that invisible tax, like I said earlier, and quantifying the weights of those kind of external functions that slow the teams down, we're never going to truly see agility. Did that help Nadia at all? Or I'm going to assume either I put you to sleep or yeah.
She said very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so try to get the cost of what the control functions are. Get them to start measuring outcomes. Start measuring how often the leadership is spending with the customer in the market. And really try to get those simple measurements to really kind of challenge them to begin to be in front of the customers. Is there any other questions from our audience?
Come on, guys, don't be shy. This is such a good opportunity. Okay, here we have another one. Do you want me to read it, David, or do you want to read it?
Sure. My glasses are working better than I thought. I work in a place where 90% of the workforce is contingent workers. What do you mean by contingent? Contractors? The psychological safety at work is very low, which affects directly the Scrum values. How do you boost the team's morale in such scenarios? And said yes. Actually, they mean contractors. I find working with contingent workers tough because they got to continually feel they feel the pressure of individually showing value because they need to get their contracts renewed. They don't feel really the team chemistry, and they might have a specific skill set that doesn't lend itself to team values. Organizations that want to adopt agility try to move. You're always going to be dependent on a certain amount of contingent workers, but I like to reduce that amount because it's hard to have psychological safety in a contractor environment because I think the mentality is if this project goes south or we change our mind, you don't have a job. And if you're really fighting like week to week to keep your contract, it's hard to have that sprint over sprint, goal over goal, long term things to embrace the Scrum values of being able to even have the psychological safety to enact them. Because psychological safety is a challenge for full time workers as much as contingent, but it's even amplified at contingent. So I don't know. Do you have an ability of showing what the cost is of ramping teams up and ramping them off to really begin to change the conversation to full stack, long lived teams?
Hey David, this is Vinaya here. The question is from me.
Hi there.
Hi, so I have to look into that really if I can, because this is the whole organization culture that they depend heavily on the contingent workforce, right?
Yeah.
So I really don't know where to start. That's how it has been all along.
No problem. Well, what you can start measuring is what the learning curve is to really recruit, hire those people, get them to understand the product they're working on in the headspace, and to get them up to speed and the cost it takes to offboard them. Because that's a huge cost that can be immediately put into doing more work getting done and creating, because that way they don't need to relearn the product or code base
Yeah.
every time, and you don't need to relearn the individual. I worked with a group just a couple months ago, and they were very conservative in their costs, like extremely conservative, and they came up with a $2 million savings that they could get if they could convert three of their teams from contingent workers to full time. Now, like
Wow.
everywhere, when you bring in that number, the first thing they're going to do is, how do you know that number? How did you? But I like to say it doesn't need to be precise to be telling. It starts the conversation. Whether that number is 2.5 million or 3.5 million, it's still a significant number that if we do little things like this, it really helps the bottom line. And that way you start getting people that are loyal to your product, that
Right.
feel a sense of ownership for it or quality. Because I don't even know if it's possible for a whole team full of contingent workers to feel connected to that product. Because,
No, it's
yeah.
tough.
So, what are some of the things you're seeing, like on the day to day of how the Scrum teams are operating?
Yeah, exactly the what you pointed out, right? They do not have that sense of ownership towards the delivery that they have because they really don't know. Today I'm here, I'm not sure next month where I'm going to be the next workplace. So they don't have that connection with the product and the sprint that they are working on.
And it's
So
hard.
yeah, and then again they are sitting at the client's place where they have that fear, right? Which I talked about, psychological safety, that have the fear that they don't express their thoughts or positive, negative, whatever they have. They just go by what a product owner is telling. Okay, let's go ahead and finish it off.
Yeah, and it's like Maslow's needs, right? If I got to worry about what I'm going to eat, how I'm going to pay my bills,
Mm-hmm.
don't have an ability to get into that problem space and come up with some really good ideas to build on.
Right.
Okay, I think Nada jumped in. You can improve that by treating them like the rest of the team, involving them in retrospectives and team events. That's true. If you have a mixed team of full-time and consulting workers, I say in order to get them to act more of a team, you got to treat them equal. And I know in some countries that there's actually legislation saying you can't treat contractors like full-time staff because then they can come back and say they were full time. These are all things that are getting in the way of getting smart people to solve complex problems. And this usually, and they're not doing it for the right reason, whether we look at things like efficiency, things like psychological safety, these are all fixable problems, but is it big enough for the organization to really rationalize to know what this is costing them? And this is the both the frustration and the motivation that keeps me trying to keep pushing through, running into that wall to make a difference. And that's why I really enjoy this Management 3.0 community, because when you're out there getting beat up all the time, you need a bunch of like-minded people to go, that's right, keep going. This is what we all need to do, and be there for each other and support each other to pick ourselves up when we're getting knocked down. So I feel very fortunate to be a part of this community.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. That was a great question.
We have another about 10 minutes. Does anyone else have anything? And thanks, David, for such glowing words on Management 3.0. It's very, it's true, but it's very nice to hear, you say that.
Oh, we got something here. Hi, one of my big challenges for me is how to inspire and spread collaboration and communication in the team. How could we get it? I don't know. It's to inspire people. It's hard because certain people, I think to inspire people, to be honest, and this is what I've learned firsthand, it's just being vulnerable and authentic to who you are, because a lot of you don't know, or maybe you do. I have cerebral palsy, so I use a power wheelchair. Early on in my career, I would try to mask my disability and try to not show the struggles I was going through and the weaknesses. And then I remember just 5 years ago, I spoke at Spark the Change, and I completely let myself vulnerable. My coach told me, he goes, you know what? I challenge you to really bring your vulnerable stuff on stage, which was scary to do in front of people who have always tried to be like Superman, to not let anything get in your way, to really explain on the little things of how do I need to find a helper to get me dressed? How do I worry about going to the washroom? How do I worry about getting a glass of water? In the moment, I thought I was making myself incredibly weak and looked down upon, seemed to give me a strength that I was not really realizing that that power of vulnerability had. And everybody was always inspired by my struggle, even though I was blind to it and not showing it. So I think by being authentic and showing what you're struggling with as a teammate what you're challenging with and solving the problem and building it, and maybe what's getting in your way outside the team to bring yourself to the work might help inspire people to share theirs. And when they see all that everybody needs to struggle, everybody has challenges, but you move through with them and not try to avoid them, I think that in itself, at least from my experience, can help them inspire. Bring in other thought leaders, bring in other books, blogs, and videos to completely spark a new way of thinking, to really spark that change. Boy, this silence can be deafening. Oh, here we go. We got
That was helpful. Thank you. That's Sonia. Anyone else have any last question? Any topic? You can type it, speak it. One more from Nadia, or it says Nada. It's all yours, Dave.
okay. You have mentioned non-revenue based performance metrics in order to create a holistic view or create influence. What are some example metrics and how are they calculated? Well, some metrics you can look at is um, how many new customers you attract, right? Has your user base grown from using it? Um, and then build the analytics in. How much are they using it? How often are they using it? Because you might want to extend their retention on how they can continue to reuse it. Um, you might want to measure how many customers you're losing because you could be alienating it. So you can easily get new users and users to visit it, but you can also really do unquantifiable ones by doing a lot of customer or user interviews. Because I find metrics tells one part of the story, but it might not tell everything. Because if I go back to my example where I thought life was great because revenue was high, and they had to use my product because that was the one the organization said that was the product that shall use. If I just went by the data of usage, I would have missed out that they weren't happy. So I think you need to do a mixture of building data analytics to measure that aspect of it, but also take the time, invest the time to be in front of active customers and users to really ask them how they feel. And I think what I've learned recently too is you need to observe users and how they're using your product. Because they might say they use it one way, they might say they like it or not. But if you watch them use it, it's going to give you a whole different perspective. Just like if you've ever helped onboard or mentor somebody onto your team, you tell them what your day to day is, but as they shadow you, they're like, hey, we noticed you did this, this, and this. You didn't tell them because you were trying to, hold that back. As humans, we forget what we do. So much of our day to day becomes routine that we forget we're actually doing it. So taking actual time to observe customers using it and then asking them questions and using data as far as new customers, how long they're using your product, which features they're using, and when are they offboarding can help give you that complementary input or feedback you need to make better decisions and replan your long-term planning.
All right. Any last question? And then Dave will give you last words. Does anyone else have anything that they want to say? Okay.
Even if you want to make fun of me, feel free to, speak up.
I just really appreciate your time. This has been really interesting.
Okay, that's great. And all I can tell you is there is no real single silver bullet answer. Even though we got agility into the mainstream and we need leadership to support it, and I work with leaders a lot today, it's just trying to build a relationship with them. I think now, either for better or for worse, agility is exposed to the things that all of you brought up in the call. The fact that leadership thinks they can change on the fly. Agile means we can change, but I always like to say you can change cheaply. Just let them know what the cost of the change is so they know it's not free. We know that they still use uh, tr- legacy resource models because they like variable capacity. We got to show them, even though they're paying a premium for those contractors, that's coming at a larger cost of the organization and building product and in really building the right things people will use. It's convincing them revenue isn't the all and be all of long sustainable companies. Every company can make a killer revenue for a short point of time, but those companies that are actually reinventing themselves and disrupting themselves, someone beats them to it, they're gonna realize that's the only game of survival. When they know that change and learning is their only survival tools over efficiency and control, then truly going to make a difference. Not agility for exposing those. I applaud the Management 3.0 practices and all the new leadership focus to get that right mindset in place to do that. Now I think the thing is starting to hold leaders accountable to that, because I don't think until they get that they're held accountable to be the change, to lead, to create safety and learning. If they can lose their job because they're not helping champion that, if they don't get their bonuses because they don't do that, that's the only way I believe it's going to get indoctrinated in. And we need all of you on the call, all losing the battle, to pick each other up, to connect frequently on things like this and read each other's blogs and really spark the change. Because it's in all of us together, just like it brought us to this point of new obstacles and challenges that are going to get us to the new obstacles and challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. It's really been really so inspiring, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you guys for joining. For people watching, we do this every month, Management 3.0 seminar, so definitely join next month. It is on November, I don't even remember, it's on November 4th at 6 p.m. where we'll be talking about what it takes to implement change. So join us, and thank you guys very much. Have a great day and evening wherever you are in the world.